Hello, and welcome to Film Fanatics, the podcast where we talk to you about the latest and greatest future and current films. I'm your host with the most, Jacob Capel, and welcome everyone to episode 2. Now, before we get started, I guess we should talk about the big news that's gone around at Star Wars Celebration this year. They had the new teaser trailer for Star Wars: The Last Jedi. Now, me personally, I am very excited for this movie to come out. I loved The Force Awakens, and I hope I'm going to love this one too. So now with that done, let's get into what we're talking about in this episode. Series. And we're talking about franchises, series of movies, like Star Wars, or Star Trek, or the Fast and Furious movies, Hunger Games, the list goes on and on. Now, I will only be talking about films that have 3 or more movies within the series. Any one of them that just has a sequel to it will not count. The first series that we are going to be talking about is the Fast and Furious films. Reason being is because just last night I had gone to go and see the Fate of the Furious, the 8th movie in the franchise. Now, for my opinion on the 8th movie, it was good. Don't get me wrong, it was good. But I don't consider it to be as good as the other 7. I think probably one of my most favorites would probably have been 6. This series revolves around a group of people, or as they consider themselves to be, family, and it's basically their adventures while they're racing. There's a lot of cars, hot girls, and once you get to the 4th movie, there's a lot more action, explosions, and basically anything that you see in an action movie. Now, this franchise has gone through some changes over the years. Like I said before, the 4th movie, things change and everything turns into an action film, which in the original 3 movies, it was basically just about racing and family. There still was some action elements in it and fighting, especially in the second one, but other than that, it was basically racing, hot girls, that sort of stuff. Guess they changed that over time because they had to make their movies better for the audience that they were giving them to. The audience had changed from who originally had saw the films to who watches those films now. Now, the change, I really did like it because when the change happened, I was in my phase of I want explosions, like Michael Bay kind of stuff. And I really enjoyed it, but I guess there's still this kind of part of me that wishes they would have stayed with the entire racing formula. I mean, the movie still stays true over time to its counterparts, which is the basic premise is family, and this family that stays together, and they ride together or they die together. But nowadays, I would still rather them keep the same formula that they had in the original films. So, talking about the one that I just recently had gone and seen, The Fate of the Furious, like I said originally, it was good, but I didn't enjoy it as much as the original 7, and I guess it's because they had to change the formula. Paul Walker had died during shooting of the 7th movie, and it devastated everyone. Now, since Paul Walker died, the formula had to be changed. And number 2 is because of the fact that it just felt really cheesy. The jokes felt flat. The action was just over the top, just like in a Michael Bay film. I just really didn't feel much suspense at all like I did with the original films. I mean, all in all, I give The Fate of the Furious about a 7.5 out of 10, and I kind of recommend going to see it if you're a really big fan of these movies, but it wasn't for me. Now, on to the next series, which is one of my personal favorites, and my father had actually gotten me into this series, Star Trek. Now, we are not talking about the generations of the Star Trek TV show, because that would take way too long to talk about. We are going to be talking about the films that I have seen, which would be from 2009 up to Star Trek Beyond. And any of the original films, I have not seen all of them. I do own them on VHS, but I have not gotten the chance or any time to watch all of them. As for the 2009 Star Trek movie, Star Trek Into Darkness and Star Trek Beyond, I have seen every single one of them, and yes, I do own every single one of them on DVD. So, anyways, Star Trek the 2009 movie was a remake, but at the same time, it created an entirely different timeline inside of the Star Trek lore. Specifically because a Romulan ship comes back through time to change the destiny of James T. Kirk and Spock and the whole crew of the Enterprise. And from that point on, it gave them a starting point, a port to then sail onwards to different adventures that the crew of the Enterprise would have. And Star Trek Into Darkness was, again, technically speaking, another remake of The Wrath of Khan, the original second Star Trek movie. But what happens in this one is much different than what happened in the other one because, of course, as I said before, new timeline, new things happen. So basically the premise of Star Trek Into Darkness is James T. Kirk and the crew of the Enterprise go out into deep space to hunt down a man named Khan. And then there is Star Trek Beyond. In Star Trek Beyond, the crew of the Enterprise again goes on another adventure to a planet inside of a nebula that has been uncharted to help a crew of aliens get back out of the nebula, but then get trapped on a planet by a mysterious alien race. Now to talk about my opinions of each of the movies. Now, when I saw the first Star Trek 2009 movie, I had gone in theaters to go and see it with my dad, and my brother and my sister were dragged along with. My brother watched the movie, my sister fell asleep during it. But you had me sitting there in awe at the screen because this was my childhood. This is what I love. I love watching these things. And I, for sure, enjoyed watching Star Trek 2009. As for Star Trek Into Darkness, I had also went to go into theaters to go and see that. And I went with my dad. He had said, hey, we're going on a little trip. And we went to a little movie theater in Door County to go and see Star Trek Into Darkness in real 3D. I definitely enjoyed that one, beyond its mixed reviews that it has had over the time that it came out to when it came out on Blu-ray. Not many people enjoyed it. I, as I said before, sure did, but I mean, that's just my opinion. Now, as for Star Trek Beyond, yes, I did enjoy it. And this goes the same as all the Fast and Furious movies. I liked it, but it wasn't as great as the originals. I feel like it went at a too fast of a pace. The humor felt a little bit dry. Sure, I giggled at some points, but obviously not as much as I had laughed in the originals. And I mean, I honest to God felt like this movie was just going nowhere. Now, I guess that might have been because the movie was directed by Justin Lin, the director of the Fast and Furious movies. J.J. Abrams had wanted to bring in someone different to direct the films to see their ideas and what they wanted to do for the franchise. And as far as I'm concerned, this movie got raving reviews, but in my personal opinion, I couldn't. It was a great film, don't get me wrong, but it just wasn't as great as, again, it wasn't as great as the originals. Let's just hope to God that J.J. Abrams goes back into the director's seat and I get another good Star Trek movie. So now we're going to stop for a second to talk about one of our sponsors, Barnes & Noble, a place that I personally love going to sit down, read a book, and maybe even buy a few. They have a wide range of genres, going from manga all the way to mystery novels. So go stop into Barnes & Noble today and buy yourself a book. And now on to the next series, which is a series that I have watched all of the movies over and over again and again, which is something that I kind of feel ashamed of because I have my own like little weekends of just binge watching all these films. And that would be the Harry Potter films. Again, I own all these on DVD and Blu-ray, and I also own all of the books. Now, for the Harry Potter series, I enjoy it. I enjoy it so much. This is a series that is near and dear to my heart, and I have gone to see every single one of these movies in theaters. The Harry Potter films were a thing that me, my mom, my brother, my sister, and any of my other siblings on my mom's side would go and see. Why I love the Harry Potter series is because it's got this massive, and I mean massive amount of lore behind it, and it has an entire world that has many mini stories inside of it that can be told for movies. Basically, and I really hope that a lot of you know about the premise of this, the movie revolves around a boy named Harry Potter, of whom's parents were killed by Lord Voldemort. And the series is about Harry going on his adventures to try and stop the Dark Lord from ever returning, and then try to stop him and kill him. And you also have Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, which is a story about a beast collector who comes to New York to originally release a beast into the wilds of Arizona, but then gets caught up in a fight between the wizard and human worlds. And this all takes place years before any of the Harry Potter films come into play. I would explain all of the Harry Potter films, but the thing is that would take too long, so I might just save that for another episode, or maybe even a bonus episode. But all these movies are great, and I definitely would recommend to go and see them. But for sure, watch them in order. Do not watch them out of order, because then the story will make absolutely no sense to you whatsoever. Now, I really wish that we had more time for this episode, and I really wish that I could talk about the Star Wars series, but that would also take too long, just like explaining the Harry Potter series. But maybe I'll save that for a bonus episode. So, thank you all for joining me, and tune in next week when, spoiler alert, Luke finally says those words we've all been waiting for. Rey, I am your father. That was so dumb.